head for Salsigne, near Carcassonne. It was the last French gold mine. It had to close in 2004. Firstly, because it was no longer profitable, but also because of the pollution. The site, now in rehabilitation, is still under surveillance. This task is assigned in France to the Office of Geological and Mining Research, the BRGM, which operates on behalf of the state.
Let's go down a bit more. We're almost there. There, that's perfect. Why did the mine close? For two reasons: environmental reasons, but mostly because of the price of gold on the international market, which was very, very low. So there was a lack of profitability. And it's true that profit is at the very core of this domain.
It was the last, unique and only. The French mine of Salsigne in the Haute department is closing today. It's the end of a mining operation that lasted 2,000 years, as it was the Romans who discovered the seam. Industrial mining at the site, however, truly dates back to 1909. A century later, the pollution of the site is real. As you'll discover, there was actually very little gold in Salsigne, but a lot of waste.
In Salsigne, some thought they'd be rolling in gold, but now they're weighed down by pollution. There's toxic ore put away here 60 years ago. Since then, on this lunar landscape, everything has stopped growing.
There's arsenic, copper, lead, zinc, lots of metals are present on the mining site of Salsigne.
All of it out in the open?
All of it out in the open, left untreated.
Considerable efforts were made to diminish the pollution, but every year a ton of arsenic is discharged into the Orbiel River. There remain over 1 million tons of waste spanning the site's 50 hectares.
Cases of drinking water intoxication were signalled as early as 1965. A few years later, an abnormal number of lung cancers were detected in the hospital of Carcassonne. But it would take nearly 20 years to recognize that these illnesses were due to arsenic poisoning. Even today, the vegetables of the Orbiel Valley are unsuitable for consumption.
This is what's left of the underground mining site, with different sorts of carts. But I can actually see that it hasn't been completely cleaned yet. It definitely will be. We must note that at the time the priority was preserving jobs, and it's true that in those years the environment wasn't much of a priority for everybody. We mustn't lose sight of the fact that the first big environmental law was passed in 1976, and in the mining field it wasn't until the 90s that good modern mining practices were put in place.
The Salsigne mine supplied over 110 tons of gold since its industrial operations began in 1909. But it supposedly still holds about 30 tons. Enough to arouse the desires of some people today.
If gold continues rising, we could reconsider developing certain gold mines in France, and also retreating some old piles of tailings. It would be worth retreating them. We wouldn't even have to crush them if they're very fine. We just have to process them with cyanide to produce gold. All while knowing, however, that the environmental constraints make it very difficult in terms of public acceptance. Absolutely solid projects will be necessary, and certainty that there will be no potential impact.
Big mining companies don't always have these same qualms. They often prefer using raw material in developing countries where manpower is cheaper, ecological organizations are weaker, regulations are more vague, and the legislation is less constraining. But the law of profit does not only concern the giants of the sector. Let's go back to a few kilometers from Tokatindung in Indonesia. Also encouraged by the soaring price of gold, small artisanal and informal mines such as this one are spreading around the deposit. It's a worldwide phenomenon that is very dangerous ecologically. Here, cyanide and also mercury are used with absolutely no precaution or inspection. These small artisanal mines also feed the world's emerging gold supply. And for militants of a completely new cause, one that calls for fair and equitable gold, perhaps this paradoxically is where the future of the metal resides.
We've no need for gold. To put it around our neck, to keep it hidden in a safe, there's no need. However, there are 15 million miners who help 100 million people live. They need it to make a living, and they do, and they only produce 10% of the world's gold. This means that the big mining groups only employ 10% of the population, but produce 90% of the world's mined gold supply. So there's a huge imbalance. Moreover, this artisanal gold produced by artisan miners is extracted rudimentarily and manually. So we can say that the value of a gold bar, which is sold by this artisan miner, will stay in the country it is produced. But for a bar produced by a big mine where everything is imported, whether we're talking about the management, the raw material or the investments, 90% of the profits are exported as dividends. Very little is left there.
Patrick Shine knows this mine in southern Peru very well. It's an artisanal mine, the way he likes them. Welcome to Santa Filomena, to the Sotrami, the company of mine workers. In this dusty desert, at nearly 3,000 meters high, visitors are rare, but always welcome. Even to the weekly miners' meeting. They've nothing to hide.
Hello everyone. Starting next week, earmuff hearing protectors are mandatory and so are safety goggles. As far as safety is concerned, there's no group leader or engineer in charge of safety. It is each of your responsibility. Don't think this is work that can be rushed because that's when accidents happen.
The Sotrami was founded in 1989, initiated by former informal miners. They gathered together as a co-op and went through the long legalization journey to get an official concession from the Peruvian state. Today, the Sotrami belongs to 168 joint shareholders. Peru is the world's 5th producer of gold, counting 180 tons in 2009. The Santa Filomena mine, with its 115 annual kilograms, is a small player, but they've got something here that the other miners in the world don't always have: pride.
I am a shareholding member of Sotrami. I'm also an owner of the concession and everything we've acquired with the business.
Luis runs the mine's engine. He's no longer a young man, so he doesn't go down to its depths, but his role is essential.
It's the heart of the mine. I'm going to start it now. It's going to make a lot of noise. Move back. Yes, down at the bottom it's a lot tougher. That said, nowadays it's easier. It's no longer like it used to be. Now there are changes. There are electronic machines. Before we had to work with our own hands, with a sledgehammer and a drill, and we carried everything on our backs.
It's still very tough. There's a hazardous 30-minute descent on foot to get further than 800 meters below the ground, and there are very few machines.
Look, this is the seam we extract from. It's where the gold is. That's the ore from which we extract the gold. Roughly speaking, there's 1 gram per bag of ore, more or less. Per ton, there's about an ounce of gold. We select the ore we extract and take it to the station for treatment. There it's processed with cyanide and carbon.